Hey, this is David Mansour, Closing Time Podcast. I'm sure there's copyright infringements here. I don't make any money, so maybe it's not. I don't know. But I just wanted to share this, and then at the end, I'm giving my commentary. I don't know what you want to say. So stay and listen. This was a great service, whether you're religious or not. If you're not religious, or if you like having arguments against Christians, there's a lot of good information because he really calls out Christians on what we're doing to, be like Jesus, to serve, to be Christians. I don't know. I loved it, so I wanted to share it, and then I wanted to just kind of give my feelings at the end. So have a watch or listen.
And this is why we love partnering with City of Refuge. They literally move people from crisis to stability to independence. In fact, one of Bruce's Bruceisms is this. He says, we don't do good things for people. We do good things with people. So would you please welcome to the stage Bruce Deel. Bruce. Bruce does this all the time. One of his favorite things is to talk about this organization. And we have a couple things in common. We're preachers' kids, and neither of us thought we would end up doing what we're doing. That's something that we have in common. So before you tell the story, Bruce, I just want you to describe where City of Refuge is located in terms of where it is in the city of Atlanta. We have a couple of pictures. Here's a shot that kind of gives a perspective.
Yeah, so we're on the west side of Atlanta. We're about 2 miles directly west of the World Congress Center and Mercedes-Benz Stadium in a pretty tough neighborhood known as the Bluff. Some of the guys in the room might know that. So historically, we're known as being one of the top zip codes in the state demographically and per capita for crime, homelessness, lack of educational opportunities. 60% of all the murders that occur in Metro Atlanta occur in our neighborhood. So
because of City of Refuge or in spite of it? Yeah.
We're trying to turn that ship right now. So.
And that description of the area was that way, has been that way for many years. I grew up in the city like you did, and that's typically been the situation. What you have accomplished is remarkable, and I'm not even sure, even in our brief time to get today, that you'll leave our audience with the scope of what's happening. But one of the reasons I wanted you to come is this all started, I wrote in my notes, with a 6-month temporary assignment. This was not what you wanted to grow. This is not what you envisioned growing up and doing with your life. So would you just tell us the story?
Yeah, so graduated from college, got married. Rhonda started having little girls. We have 5 daughters, Cassie, Kelsey, Kenzie, Kaylin, Carly.
Wait, a little slower.
Cassie, Kelsey, Kenzie, Kaylin, Carly. And that's why I look like this. But anyway, now giving us 15 grandchildren, by the way. So life is pretty full.
Yeah.
But so a little over 28 years ago, I was asked to go downtown on a 6-month assignment.
You were working at your dad's church? Or
no, I was working at a church. It was called Pleasantdale Church of God up in Doraville.
Okay.
And I was asked to go downtown Atlanta, a little church that was in disrepair, just a few folks, been without a pastor for 6 months. And they asked me to go downtown with the idea of closing it, selling the property. And so Ron and I talked, and I thought, well, I get to speak every Sunday and develop some business acumen, sell the property, and go back to the suburban life. And our story is our 5th or 6th Sunday, this young lady walked in, stood out in the crowd. At the end of the service, she walked down. She was weeping, and she took me by the hands, and she said, I've been hooking and stripping 14 years. Can you help me get out of the life? And I didn't really know what get her out of the life meant, but we simply said yes. And so she came back the next Sunday. She brought Bill with her, who was a 52-year-old alcoholic, said he hadn't been in church in 30 years. They sat on the second row. We started singing that little chorus, I Need You More than yesterday. And 5 minutes into the service, Bill just literally fell out in the center aisle and started weeping and wouldn't stop. And so I slowed the music down. I went down. I said, can I help you? And he said, well, I think I need Jesus. And I said, well, we usually do that at the end of service.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I want him now. And I went, fine, take Jesus. So the next Sunday, 4 more drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless people.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 37.
37.
Yeah.
And this was a short-term assignment. You're going to get back to the suburbs.
Get back to suburbs, safe environment, great church, great opportunities. The next Sunday, 10 more showed up. We showed up 4 months into a 6-month assignment. There were literally 100 people in crisis. had invited each other to this little church and were looking at us going, can you help us? And I drew on my deep theological training and looked at my wife and said, we've been conned by God, woman. I mean, this is wrong on every level. But we stayed. You know, I mean, again, it's providential plan of God, so we stayed. And Andy, we accepted that assignment, and we were still living in the suburbs. My wife was still pulling our girls across the street to school in the morning, little red wagon, back in the evening. I was driving in, and Rhonda called me one morning a couple months after we accepted that assignment, and I started City of Refuge, and she was weeping, and she said, hey, babe, if we're really going to impact the city, we got to go live in the city. If we want people in crisis to trust us, we have to live with them and show them we trust them. Mm. And my response was, I don't appreciate you and God getting together making plans for my life.
And how old were your daughters at this point?
My daughters were 7, 5, 3, and 1. Wow. We had 4 at the time. Yeah. And so the short version is we ended up moving in that old building downtown.
The church?
In the church building on the 3rd floor with our daughters. Interesting. The first night we lived there, a drug addict was high and tried to steal our car, but he was so high, he hot-wired the windshield wiper motor, so the next morning I came. So we ended up living there 6 years, broken into 34 times, 3 vehicles stolen, guns, knives, fist fights. I've been in Superior Court with guys that threatened to kill my family, and it's just more fun than we'd ever had in church.
So we could probably just stop there, and because all of us, you know, every once in a while you're with somebody, and Bruce is one of these people that after I spent an afternoon with Bruce touring City of Refuge, I got home and I said, Sandra, I feel like I need to go do something with my life. So, and we're just getting started. Okay, so you basically told the church up north, hey, I'm not coming back, and you realize real quickly you're not just pastoring a church, you're pastoring a community. Right. And so where did it go from there?
Yeah, well, we moved in, and I found myself in my own personal Bible study in the book of Nehemiah. And, you know, in chapter 1, verse 2, Nehemiah says, when my brother Hananiah came to visit, I inquired of him concerning the condition of my hometown. And he reported me that the walls thereof have been destroyed, the gates have been destroyed, burned with fire, and my friends and family have been taken captive. And Nehemiah said, when I heard these words, I sat down, and I wept, and I fasted, and I prayed for many days. And Rhonda and I realized that although we'd grown up in the mountains of Virginia and thought that's where we would do ministry, we've realized that God had now given us a geographical calling to the city of Atlanta. And the walls have been destroyed, and the gates have been burned with fire, and our friends and family have been taken captive to addiction, to poverty, to trafficking, to domestic violence. And we wept and fasted and prayed, but we decided that we were not just going to weep and fast and pray. We decided to move to Nehemiah chapter 2. When the king looks at Nehemiah, when he brings the wine cup before him, he says, why is your face so downcast? I've never seen you look this way before. This is obviously a sickness of the heart because you're not physically ill. And Nehemiah shares with him about his hometown. And the king asks this question. He says, what would you have me do? And Nehemiah said, well, if it please the king, send me. And Ron and I just decided somehow in the moments of surrender to God, we just said, well, since you've called us and we know about the condition of the city, send us. And so we started literally 28 years ago with 20 children in an after-school program, just feeding them bad food, Coke and potato chips and hot dogs, but teaching them to read and write. And then that developed into into summer camps and Christmas in the city. And then as I was driving them back in our vans to drop them off in these poverty environments, it's really like Holy Spirit said, are you just going to drop these children off in an environment with a single mom that doesn't have food or clothing or selling her body to provide money for her lifestyle? So we started the Single Moms Ministry. And as we were driving past them, we saw all these homeless folks on the corner, and it felt like, are you just going to drive by this group of people in need to get to this group of people in need? And so literally at this point in time, when we reflect back, it was a really wise strategic plan, but we didn't know it. It was just ministry by opportunity. One thing opened the door to another thing, which opened the door to another thing. And our philosophy has simply been, we'll say yes when another opportunity presents itself.
Now, you were warned. I mean, this is my takeaway from our conversation. Because you were trying to get input from other people who were doing these kinds of things. And they basically said, pick one and focus on one. And you realized that just keeps people in the cycle. Talk a little bit about how you work through that.
Yeah, so 22 years ago, we were given 8 acres of land, 5 acres under roof, over in the bluff in a tough state.
After you presented it to the gentleman over and over and finally said,
Yeah, well, when we found the property, my real estate buddy came back. He said, hey, I found 8 acres of land, 5 acres under roof, 8-foot fence with razor wire armed guard at the gate. And I'm like, well, our dreams have come true, right? Go find out how much they want for that. And the owner wanted $1.6 million at that time. And my counteroffer was, we'll have him money. And so... So I presented that offer to him for 6 months, and 6 months later he gave it to us.
There you go.
Just an amazing, amazing thing.
Yeah, I would clap about that, yeah.
So when we got this large facility, I really felt like we needed to create what we call a one-stop shop, collective impact. So all of the services in one location for somebody coming out of crisis. We discovered in those first 6 years that if you're a single mom with children, or you're getting out of incarceration, or you're coming out of addiction recovery, you have to make an appointment with this organization for housing, somewhere else for education, somewhere else for vocation, somewhere else for mental health. You get a different case manager in each one of those who might have a different idea about your path forward. I said, what if we could do coordinated intake, coordinated case management, all in one environment? So I presented that to a lot of funders and organizations in Metro Atlanta, and to your point, everybody said it's a bad idea. You need to be exclusive, focus on one thing and do it really well. And I didn't mean to be sarcastic. My response was, our one thing is transformation, which requires all of these things, right? And so now 22 years later, since we got that facility, we've served over 50,000 people with collective impact, full wraparound services, incredible success, 9 locations around the country. God's done phenomenal work. And it's an interesting thing, Andy, that now all of those people who said it was a bad idea think it was a good idea. And there's several of them that actually think it was their idea.
That is how the world works. So when you toured the facility with you, there's a graphic on a wall that you walked me through that I thought was so extremely helpful. And it really confirms this idea that for there to be transition and stability, all 4 have to work. So we're going to put this up here. I know everybody can't read all this, but I just thought this was so helpful in terms of the context of why you chose to go all in with all 4.
Sure. So we had been involved in this for a few years, and somebody came along and said, well, you're following the Brookings Institute model, which I was not familiar with, but I started studying. So the Brookings Institute model did a 10-year study on poverty. And they determined that if you're born into poverty or enter poverty at an early age in life, there are 4 things that have to be addressed for you to have a potential of being middle class by middle age. So those 4 things are safe and affordable housing, quality educational opportunities, health and wellness, and a livable wage earning opportunity upon graduation from high school.
Go over this one more time. You got to have all 4 to transition out of poverty and stay out.
Yep. Safe and affordable housing, right. Quality educational opportunities, health and wellness, and a livable wage earning opportunity upon graduation from high school. So those are the 4 smaller orange circles. And the study showed that if you address all 4 of those in a collective impact, continuum of care approach, there's a 90% chance that you could be middle class by middle age.
Wow.
But if you miss just one of the 4 in the journey, there's also almost a 90% chance that you'll live in poverty your entire life.
Wow.
And so, for example, in the city of Atlanta, if you're born into poverty, the research and statistics show that there's only a 4% chance that you will never not live in poverty.
4%.
Only 4% chance, unless somebody like a City of Refuge or other organizations come along and provide these 4 things in a connected approach to your life.
Wow. So but you had already committed to this idea before you'd seen this, because your goal was stability and independence.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, well, where did you come up with these ideas? And I'm like, well, there's this thing called the Bible that has a lot of really good ideas about how you help people move forward.
No charge, but good.
No charge for the Bible. Yeah. Brookings will charge you a lot for research. But anyway.
Yeah. So, but where you started initially, you were feeding children, and then talk a little bit about how you built into all 4 of these, because the facilities, plural, that City of Refuge now runs, it's extraordinary. And again, it's one of the reasons I wanted to put the Bruceism of the beginning, that you just aren't doing things for people, you're doing things with people, because the goal at the end of the day is independence. So,
yeah, well, I mean, you think about the two drivers behind recidivism, for example, coming out of incarceration, people reoffend for 2 main reasons: lack of safe and affordable housing, lack of employment opportunity, and livable wage. Mm-hmm. So it's good for us to go into the prison and minister to them and get them to accept Christ. But when they come out of prison, if they don't have somewhere to live and a job that's going to make them have a livable wage, they're going to revert back often to bad behavior. So we said, all right, let's build a system. So the 345 is a hotel we bought and renovated. It's 31 efficiency apartments for men coming out of incarceration or for our veterans experiencing PTSD. So when they move in, they have safe housing, affordable housing. We take them through our vocational training so they have a livable wage. We do family reconciliation. We do mental health. We do addiction recovery. So unless you take all of the pieces of somebody's life that led them to a bad decision, on the other side of that, you address those, then now you bring them to a place of a good decision. And we're not there to be the hero. We're there to be the guide. They're the hero. A woman coming out of trafficking is the hero. A child coming out of abuse by whoever in their environment, we're just a guide. So for us, we create pathways of opportunity so that everyone has the potential of success somewhere down the road.
So talk a little bit about what the facilities that you have now developed, and then I've got some more questions about what you're doing. But just, the scope is amazing, I thought. So you had that original building,
right.
And since then?
Since then, we've developed City of Refuge on the west side in the Bluff at 1300 Joseph Boone Boulevard. So in the front of the building on the right, there are 2 buildings, 36 housing units for moms with children.
36.
36.
And one of the unique things is that children can stay with their moms. They're not separated.
Right. So 36 units for moms with children coming out of homelessness, free preschool from 6 weeks of age to 5 years of age. Walk out down the hallway, private Christian school on campus with students that live on our campus or from our neighborhood. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, because if they don't live on our campus, they're coming from poverty and food desert environments. So we do 3 nutritious meals a day. Mercy Care Medical Clinic, 10,000 square foot medical clinic, 9 full-time medical staff, 750 patient visits a month. Our survivor program we'll talk more about later, but 119 beds for survivors of sex trafficking and exploitation. Commercial kitchen that does 350,000 meals a year. An emergency crisis center that's available 24/7 for women and children that are escaping, fleeing from domestic violence or sex trafficking. Call the hotline and we send a rescue team out. And vocational training, which does multiple areas of training on campus. So that's on the one campus in Atlanta. In addition to that, we purchased properties around us. We just opened 2 8-bedroom, 8-bath homes for women coming out of incarceration or trafficking. Built 5 brand new single-family homes on the street adjacent to ours so families can experience first-time home ownership. Khadijah just moved into a home recently with her children, first-time homeowner in the history of her family. Wow. And we're able to make that opportunity available. We'll break ground on 10 townhomes on the corner in the next couple months. We're under construction on a 36,000 square foot building right now across the street. Entrepreneurship center, healthcare center, fresh food market, 25 more units of affordable housing.
Like I said, that's why I went home and said, Sandra, I need to do something with my life after being with Bruce. Okay, so I want to dive into one of these areas because it was I was so impressed by this, and that is job skill development. Because in other words, if a person doesn't have a skill or develop a skill to be able to support themselves, it's key. Talk about what you're doing on site in terms of job skills. I just thought this was amazing. In fact, let's start with the one that we have pictures for. Talk a little bit about what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so years ago, we to your point, we started to understand that a livable wage is critical. So the latest report shows that in Metro Atlanta, a single adult has to make $19.05 an hour just to survive. Goes up depending on the number of children in the family. So we decided to look at the environment around us. What are the vocations that have more opportunities for employment than there are people applying for those vocations? And so auto technicians are one of those. So Genuine Parts in Napa, I spoke to some of their executives several years ago, pitched the idea of an auto training program. So we now are in class number 25 of auto technician training. They go through a 16-week class, receive up to 9 levels of ASE certification. When they graduate, we announce where they're going to work. They get a $3,000 set of auto tools to take with them on the way. At least 50% of every class doesn't own their own vehicle, so we get vehicles donated that they get roadworthy, and then at graduation, we give them titles and key to a car so they can drive to work instead of riding public transportation. Out of those 25 classes, 100% employment placement in dealerships all over Metro Atlanta.
100%.
100%.
Isn't that amazing?
In addition to that, we run culinary arts training programs. So we're in class 38 of culinary arts. We run cybersecurity, coding, hospitality, customer service, armed security patrol. So last year we had the blessing and good fortune of helping 819 people that came to us unemployed or underemployed find livable wage income in Metro Atlanta.
And yeah. And not just livable wage, the cybersecurity, and then initially you were teaching coding. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so coding was a big, successful program for a long time, and then AI sort of took over writing a lot of the code, so cybersecurity became even more critical. So cybersecurity is actually one of our most successful classes right now. The last class graduated. The lowest starting salary out of that class, and again, people coming out of really difficult places in life. The lowest starting salary was $73,000, and the highest was $125,000. So it's not a bad journey to come from a place of brokenness to all of a sudden doing cybersecurity in one of the major companies in Metro Atlanta.
And the facility where they do this is beautiful. You've attracted some extraordinary corporate, not just sponsorships, but really partners who value what you're doing and come in and help with that. It's incredible. Talk a little bit about your, and you touched on this, didn't mention it overtly, your relationship with the city of Atlanta, because the city of Atlanta knows about City of Refuge, and because of the rooms the bed space you've opened up for immediate crisis. Talk a little bit about that. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's a great relationship. You know, as you mentioned, a lot of corporations in Atlanta are our partners, our friends along the way, foundations in Atlanta, churches, and the city. And so we've just had a great relationship for many years. When they present to us opportunities of places of gaps that we could help to fill in some way, where we have, offer to them assets and trainings that we've learned along the way. All three mayors that I've served under, Shirley Franklin, Kasim, Mayor Bottoms, and now Andre's great. They're just great friends. They believe in the city. They believe in what's going on. We don't always necessarily approach things from exactly the same position, but we want the same outcome.
Right.
And the outcome is a healthy, vibrant, flourishing community, especially on the west side that's been disinvested in so many years. And so it's just a great partnership where they're able to endorse us. That helps us with credibility when we go into communities around the country as well.
Yeah, I just thought that was so powerful that you're on the short list of who they call. Anyway, so Bruce and City of Refuge are deeply involved with women who've been trafficked and women with children who've been trafficked. And it's an extremely sensitive topic. And so I've asked him to share what he can about what City of Refuge is doing in this space, and specifically, and this is disturbing, why it's so important to do this work in the city of Atlanta. And he'll give you the details in a minute, but there's a hallway where you have provided privacy and safety for women and their children. And so we walked briefly down that hallway, and there was no one in the hall, just the two of us. And it felt, as he shared the stories, it felt like sacred space to me. It was so emotional. So talk as much as you can about that. This is important.
Yeah, it's a tough subject. So sex trafficking, second fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world now. So $236 billion spent annually worldwide on the illegal purchase of sex. The United States is the #1 consumer of child pornography in the world. 22 million graphic images of child sex available on the internet now. In Metro Atlanta, there are on average every 7 days, 47,700 ads for illegal purchase sex posted on the internet every week. At least 10% of those 4,700 are for sex with children under the age of 12. So it's just a graphic, dark space. 13 years ago, we were invited by a partner of ours to take in a young lady that had been trafficked. We hid her away because they were looking for her. She didn't come out of her room, Andy, for 40 days, and then asked to see whoever's in charge. I took a couple staff in. Her first words to me were, "You got to take me to the courthouse, wipe away the fact I ever existed. Change my name, my social security number, birth certificate. They'll find me, they'll kill me." I went home that night and told Rhonda, I said, "We're going to start a safe house for survivors of sex trafficking." She goes, "Well, you've never you've never been in this space before." I said, "Well, I've never been married before I married you, and it's worked out fine, so we'll give it a shot." But anyway, so we started a safe house, which eventually led to a second house. We now have 119 beds for survivors. We've housed over 1,200 survivors over the past dozen years. Atlanta, historically, in the past decade, has been number 1, 2, or 3 in the nation for number of calls to the national hotline per capita. So in Atlanta, $300 million a year is spent on illegal purchase of sex. The average trafficker, pimp in Atlanta takes home $30,000 a week, right? So it is just the darkest, most graphic thing that we've ever dealt with. The trauma-informed care, the mental health, the addiction, the family reconciliation, if appropriate, is just heartbreaking. It's one of the toughest places on our campus and in our ministry to keep great employees, because the attrition rate is high, because they hear a brand new horror story every single day.
Yep.
And the graphic stories I could tell would make everybody's blood curdle. I think we all understand, but it's not an over there problem. Right? It's not a third world problem. It's not a somewhere on the West Coast. This is our problem. This is our issue. We're one of the top 3 cities in the country for this, and it's in our neighborhood. We have a men's group now called Most Men Opposing Sex Trafficking, and we set up operations to rescue women and children and to take down pedophiles and traffickers. And we did an operation not long ago in Alpharetta. At a hotel, we obviously won't give, and arrested a number of men who showed up to buy sex from kids, and those who showed up bringing women or children to us. So it's not somewhere else, it's right here. And it's critical that we as the church stand up and be a part of that.
Well, you certainly have. And again, how many rooms have you created just for these women?
We have 119 beds for survivors of trafficking.
Yeah. It's amazing. And there's more. And if that was all you were doing, it's amazing. But in addition to everything else City of Refuge does, it's incredible. Now, real quick, we have 3 or 4 minutes left. Other cities found out about what you're doing and wanted to replicate the model. Talk a little bit about what you're doing in that space, because this is so encouraging.
Yeah, so we have 3 additional locations in Georgia that do various pieces of what we do. We have 3 locations in Virginia. We have a vibrant location in Baltimore, another vibrant one in Chicago. We're currently under launch way in Brunswick, Georgia, and in Nashville, Tennessee, and in conversations with a couple other cities as well. So the model is attractive, and we're being invited to other environments to try and make a difference in their cities.
Because it's working.
It's working.
That's awesome. Goals for the future? What's
goals for the future are, if we could have 25 of these around the country before I turn 90, that'd be great. The opportunity, we do believe it's a God model, and we believe it's effective. And so to be able to take that, and one of the other goals is frankly to do things just like this, to be able to share to people that love God and love people about what their generosity does and how it benefits organizations like ours and others, and how they can personally make a difference in it.
And your annual budget spend with what you're doing now?
We're about $28 million a year for Atlanta.
Yeah, so it's a big operation.
It's a big operation.
So I told Bruce what I wanted him to do with our last couple of minutes, and he said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, we're big boys and girls. We can handle it." I said, "You have a perspective on the church and a perspective on culture that most of us don't have, because we're, a little, rabbit wheel, or not gerbil wheel, just doing our thing, going to work, coming to church. If you had a microphone to the church in the United States and you had an opportunity to say something, well, I would love to know what you would say, and say it to us."
Well, I think that the commandment of Jesus to, love the Lord your God with everything that you have, and then love your neighbor as yourself is obviously the foundation on which we live. And I think in the church world, I think we do a pretty good job with the first part of that. And I think loving our neighbors ourselves sometimes gets lost a little bit in the busyness, to your point, of our life. When I first settled on City of Refuge, I just started working through Scripture to find these foundational scriptures around caring for the poor and needy, the broken, the destitute. And there are 3 or 4 of those I'll share in my closing thoughts. Isaiah 58, the prophet, inspired by the Lord, just says, God's not impressed with your fast. He's not impressed with the fact that we show up on Sunday morning. He's not impressed with the fact that we do A, B, and C that's been told us to do. He said, here's the true fast that I've required, key word of you, that you break the yoke of bondage in the lives of those around you, that you divide your bread with the hungry, and that you take into your house the homeless poor. And he says, when you do these things, then your healing will quickly come, and your light will rise as a noonday sun, and you will be as a well-watered garden. You know, I jump over to Micah chapter 6, verse 8, where again the prophet says, this is what the Lord has required of you, that you do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly before the Lord your God. And for me, doing justice is simply taking what's wrong and making it right. It's wrong for people to be homeless. It's wrong for children to be trafficked. It's wrong for inmates being released to have nowhere to live, right? So we want to make that right. In Matthew 25, Jesus says, oh yeah, by the way, at the end of time, if you're a sheep, you'll be on my right hand and hang out with me forever. And if you're a goat, you'll be on my left hand and you won't. And here's how you know if you're a sheep or a goat. If you give water to the thirsty and food to the hungry and clothes to the naked, and you visit the sick and the imprisoned, you're a sheep and we'll hang out forever. And if you don't, we won't. And in 1 John 3, 16, 17, and 18, you know, the apostle says, hey, can you really say that the love of God abides in you? If you see your friend, your neighbor, your family member in need, and you have what it takes to meet their need, and you choose not to share it with them, can you truly say the love of God exists in you? And so I think as the church, as the body of believers, as those who have received the greatest gift of all, I think it's not only our opportunity, but our responsibility to now be vessels and to be rich by sharing in the lives of others.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, so I just thought this was just fascinating, amazing. Just not only was Bruce just incredibly entertaining at Southside this weekend, just what he's done. Obviously, you can listen to it. I've known Bruce for a long time, and I use that loosely because Bruce came and did Operation Boot Camp several years ago. And I mean, I met him briefly, but then I've kind of followed him on Facebook and, you know, followed City of Refuge, and we run their 5K every year. Just absolutely love what he's doing. And I don't know, not only just so charismatic, the efforts and the things that he's doing, it kind of matches my heart, if you will, of what I think we as a world should be doing. There's so much going on. We all like to complain or even just judge people in situations that they made a choice to be there, or they're not making a choice to get out of there, or whatever. And I don't think we all fully understand what it's like to be in those positions and how hard it is to make a choice to get out of there, if it's even possible. And I mean, even just poverty in general, just even crossing the county line, and you talk about Riverdale, you know, the glass ceiling, I know we've heard that term, but I think it fits for economics and class status as well. I mean, you've got somebody that's grown up in an area of poverty. They don't see what their possibilities are. You know, we talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about limiting beliefs. We believe in those two things unless it's poor people. Then they're just making a choice. Well, I mean, we all have those situations, and I find myself in it. I find myself with limiting beliefs that, you know, I've already gone well past what I should have based on my economic status as a child. And it's not true. It really is limitless for all of us, but that's not an easy thing to overcome mentally. You need support. You need people telling you that. You need people showing you that. You need to see other people around you. But if everybody around you, everybody around you is, you know, a mechanic, then you're probably going to grow up as a mechanic unless you're one of those special people. I love the stats that Bruce used in there. I should have wrote it down. You know, a 2% chance that you make it out without those 4 pillars. I mean, that's incredible. He put what I thought in my mind to numbers and to facts and to science for my science people out there. That they need those things, and they need them from us. And I love how he ended with a call to action. And this isn't just for Christianity. And I hope you made it to watch this, that this, you know, it speaks to all of us. If you have the means, to me, that's humanity. If you have the means to help, then you should. Or how do you consider yourself a good person? I've often misstated myself in arguments with friends. And I love when people give people the opportunity to change their mind, because sometimes they're not really changing their mind. They just did a poor way of expressing it. And I've often spoke on how I was disappointed in the wealthy in our country, of the wealth gap, of how people buy. This whole came up with a $50 million, I think Jeff Bezos bought a $50 million yacht. And I just, I think I expressed myself as he shouldn't do that. It's his money. Yes, he earned it. I definitely believe that you earn the money, you do whatever you want. I think it's more of I wish for myself that when I'm in that situation, that I will be extremely generous, and I will never value a $50 million yacht over an entire community. I mean, 50 million goes a long way in the city of Riverdale, giving Wi-Fi or computers or laptops, whatever, to kids in just one community. Now, should a corporation buy a yacht and you share it? But for one person, it just to sit, and I don't know that he owns it. I don't know how much you have to make to, whatever. You make it, you spend it any way you want. And I wish you all the best. I don't care how much you make, you can spend every dime of it on Care Bears if you want. My wish for myself and my wish for our country and our world is that people will be more generous. And I don't know what that looks like, because I do know that you can't just hand out money, because then people won't do for themselves. I completely understand that. I don't know the solution. I do believe, though, if you provide an environment for people to better themselves and make it to where it's undeniable my thoughts, and I'm sure there's holes in this, but if you went into Chicago and instead of spending $15 billion in Ukraine, if we spent $5 billion in the ghettos of Chicago, building just tremendous community centers where those kids are fed, and we just get them young, and we attract them into those community centers, separate them from their environment, not from their parents, but allow them a place to come, and they come play video games. They get a couple good meals a day. Maybe you sneak in some learning here and there. And then as that generation gets older, as you show them that that's not the life that they have to have, you show them what their abilities are. You have people come back to the community. You have all these athletes that should be involved. If I won $1 billion, would I have a home on each coast? Yeah, I probably would. But I'd also have, a lot of homes for kids, and I would make a huge dent. I think it's hard to quantify it. I don't want to speak. It's hard to speak when you don't have that money either. I understand that. It's easy for me to say what I'd do if I had that money, because I know people probably come with their handouts, and I know when you have it, you're scared you're going to lose it. So I understand there's a lot of complexities, and what I want to say is that this is more my hope for myself and my hope for my community, for others, for our country and the world, that we will reach down and help people that can't help themselves. And it's not our place to judge whether they should have made a better decision, or they could go to college, or they could do better in school. We don't know what it's like to live in their house. We don't know what it's like to get up and, I don't know, just picture yourself in different surroundings that it might look different for you. So I absolutely love Bruce, love what he's doing here. We haven't even talked about the trafficking and how it's right here in our community. Just, it's heartbreaking to think that, these are kids that, hate to say it, I don't know if I heard it from a speech or from Bruce or another place, that these kids, some of these kids that are put in trafficking, they're not missed. We don't hear about it because these parents don't have the means to hire private detectives to fight to get their kids back, to do this and that. These kids are being stolen out of areas where maybe the kid had such a rough life they found themselves on the street to run away from what's at home, and then they were taken into this. Again, I am speaking from a place of ignorance. I'm just asking you to challenge yourself to question, like, where our judgments are. And are these choices? This isn't just, I don't think it's as simple. And I think we got to figure out to solve as much of this as we can, whether that's financially, whether it's with your time, whether it's just your opinions, whether it's who you vote for, whatever you can do, whatever I can do. That's my encouragement for everybody, is to just get involved. Don't post on social media how passionate you are about this or that, but not have action. I don't know that, again, my opinion, you do whatever you want. But, don't post how passionate you are about anti-abortion if you're not helping some way with your time or your money to alleviate that situation. I mean, we all have our opinions, but if you're going to protest it and, no, I'm against abortion, but yet, you're on your wave runner every weekend at the lake, you aren't doing anything to help with these kids that are growing up in poverty, that the cycles just continue, then, shut up. I'm an asshole, I know. I can't help it. My opinions, they're not founded in much other than my experiences and what I've seen and how I feel. So, I don't know. Thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day. And I'd love feedback. I'd love feedback of why it couldn't work, why it could work, and what you're doing or what you're not doing, or what, I don't know, just anything. So I'm not above correction. I found that self many times when I have opinions that I really didn't understand the other side. So I'm trying to also be open to that. But I don't know. Let's figure this out.